should be good. So let's start with the questions first, so we kind of move quickly through it. So the first one I have is how to find motivation for self-directed learning. Self-directed, yeah, learning. Just that. From Daredevil Geek. I don't know the name of the person because they both go by the name Daredevil Geek, and their username is that as well. So I'm gonna answer. So first, realize the opportunities that are there. So one of the motivation points can be, if you look at how the world is changing, you can recognize that in the future there will not be many jobs, like the jobs that are now today that exist, some of them will not be available in the future, and it might come sooner than you think. Like driver jobs, all these kind of jobs, they might go away, and just by thinking about the future, let's say 10 or 15, 20 years from now, you can it can help motivate yourself to be like, oh, I really need to focus on the studies. So that's one point. Another is if you start your projects, if you start them small and first you focus on the very basic functionality of it, you get it right, and then you have the freedom to do anything you want with it. So you can improve the design, you can add some more features, and once you are in this process, when you in that, I guess, stage, when you understand that you can build it, you're not worried about that anymore. That's where you'll experience a lot of motivation, because you are starting to think, oh, I could also build this, I could also add this to it, and it kind of captures you and it helps you. Just a second. I'm just gonna find something here. So the third point that I have is better quality of life, opportunities, remote work, and salary. So these are all the kind of the points that you can consciously think about that will help you make a decision to be more consistent in your coding. So one of the things that you could do is just spend some time researching the salaries, researching the opportunities, researching what kind of lifestyle you might have if you code. Another thing is think about the things you could build as an inspiration. So if you cannot at this point build something like a Twitter clone or something, you can, by thinking about what you could potentially build, if you had the skill, you can start giving yourself the motivation to proceed, to continue, not to quit. So let's say you have an idea of an app in your mind. Oh, I want to create a certain app for, I don't know, tracking your health or something. By thinking about, oh, someday I'm going to build it, it can give you the additional motivation. And the other point is, try not to rely on motivation too much and rely on systems. So once you've decided that, okay, I want to do this, I want to pursue coding, you can definitely stop thinking too much about motivation, because motivation comes and goes. It's kind of also like inspiration. If you just sit around and expect to have some kind of motivation, sometimes it's hard, and you have to constantly come back to resources like videos, which can help, but try to build systems that allow you to structure your day and your learning in such a way that you don't have to think about it. So 100 days of code is one thing that you could do. Another thing is just like, by total commitment to learning to code, so giving yourself a deadline. Okay, in 6 months from now, I want to be able to do this and this and this. What do I need to do? I need to code, I need to learn this particular technology in this period of time. And also, what can help with motivation is sticking to one particular resource or one particular technology. Let's say JavaScript. If you stick to it for long enough, you'll begin to experience motivation, because you will see the additional opportunities of, oh, I could also now build this with it. It's not only getting you get stuck at those introductory levels of so let's say you're starting to learn Python, and you get stuck at that introductory level. If you keep jumping around, you will never experience enough motivation to continue. But if you stuck and go deep, you'll understand certain subtleties of the language, and you'll be able to proceed quicker. So what's next? Another question that I received is, when you don't feel good enough, how do you figure out you're job ready? So basically, you never feel good enough, so how do you know when you're job ready? So for this, I have 2 points, I think, or 3. So first is judge by your projects that you can build or that you've built before. So let's say you're looking for a front-end job. And for me, the best kind of the easiest way to measure it is if you look at the FreeCodeCamp's curriculum, for example. It has those sections of like front-end section, the data visualization section, full stack section, right, where you can build the projects. And in the end, there's a chunk of projects that, yeah, and if you're comfortable, even if you haven't been doing FreeCodeCamp itself, you can judge by the level of difficulty of those projects if you're ready or not. So let's say you're shooting for a front-end job. If you can do the projects that are there, or a similar project, if you can build it, and judge by the last one, because it's the most difficult ones, you're probably ready for a job in that particular part of the field that you're shooting for. So if you're starting to code, and probably it's easier to shoot for a front-end position, unless you have some experience or you've worked with full stack before. I believe it's a bit easier to get a front-end position first. So another is, don't decide for yourself. So you don't have to decide when you're job ready. You can delegate that decision to the employers. So what you could do is just keep applying. So the way I've done it before is also I try to follow this approach of building a system where, for example, let's say I want to get a job, and I start applying, and I go to the site, whatever the sites might be for your country. So the key is to consistently bang out a certain number of job applications per day. So let's say I had a goal of 7 per day, and whatever happens, whatever those jobs were, I was just shooting out resumes, because it was my first, I was trying to get my first tech job, so I wasn't really shooting for something like specific or some kind of cool, crazy company that would be like super amazing. I was more likely, I was just testing the waters just to see what's out there, and it's a great opportunity for you to assess whatever level you are on, and don't judge by just one company. So go to the interviews, and while you're still learning, don't think, oh, I have to exactly, what's the worst that could happen? Nothing really. Maybe your ego will suffer a bit, but if you train yourself to think about it in such a way that any job interview is training for you, and it's also gives you additional perspective. So let's say you've been only to one interview, and you've seen an interview process of that company, but it doesn't tell you anything. They might be completely crazy or completely very, very specific about certain things that other companies don't care about at all, and you might made kind of an image of yourself as being not good enough just based on just the opinion of this company or a certain person in that company. So it's a numbers game. As long as you keep applying, you keep going to the interviews, and you'll get interviewed, that's for sure. Eventually, again, it's also a numbers game, right? So the more you apply, the more callbacks, the more kind of leads you'll get. So, and you'll be able to judge yourself. Okay, I've been to this interview, this company seems nice, this position is what I want, but I lack these 2 technologies, I don't know them yet. So you can focus your studies on those, and then find similar companies and apply to them. So that's how you would kind of judge the level where you are at. And that was the question, when you don't feel, never feel good enough, but how do you judge if you're job ready or not? How can you tell? So that's what I would recommend. Another question I received is how to deal with imposter syndrome, and that for me is a bit difficult, because there is no way to deal with it that will just cure it for you forever. It's more like you have to train, again, you have to train yourself to think in a certain way, and also you have to expose yourself to the different, like you were doing with the companies, let's say, when you were applying. Same goes for programmers that already have jobs. So talk to them, go to the events and talk to the people that are employed already, and ask them how they feel. And I promise you, they'll tell you, oh, I feel like I'm an imposter. Like 90% of them will say that. The other 10% are probably too, have too high of a self-image to tell you, right? So they're just being a bit defensive. But everybody experiences it, I think, to a certain degree. Some people experience more of it, and also another thing to do is to continuously change your self-image, visualize yourself at that job, look at your past accomplishments. I've built this, I've built this project and this project and this project. I've been to this company and I worked on this project with them. It was a success. So by constantly fighting your like the tendency of your mind to push you down, you can the way you fight it is by reminding yourself of what you've done before, of what you've already accomplished. So this is helpful. Another thing that you could do is to write to people, talk to people, again, as that are already there, and definitely know that everybody experiences it. Once you know that it's not only you, you'll be fine. It gets very much easier, usually. So another way to go about it is to share your frustrations. Just do the 100 days of code hashtag and share your frustrations. Ask, does anyone else feel like an imposter? And everybody will be like, yeah, it's me. Yeah. I'll also be there. Another question I've received is how to figure out which resources are best. And for this, I have an answer. So one is ask people on Twitter and in your life, because they know they're the people who are on the same path as you, the people who are learning, or the people who are a bit further in the journey. They will know because they've tried, they've sampled the resources, they know what works. For example, if anybody asks me how to learn Git, I usually recommend them to go to Treehouse, because they have a really good course that I once liked. Maybe it's changed, but I remember that it helped. For example, Code School course didn't get me to a level where I thought it would, and there was a discrepancy there. So I recommend that. If anybody asks me how to learn JavaScript, I'm like FreeCodeCamp, because that's something that worked for me. So definitely ask around and use hashtags 100 days of code, code newbie, FreeCodeCamp, learn to code, and people will tell you. Because and just recently, yesterday, I was asking because all my projects that I make don't look very, very nicely. I've asked some people on Twitter, how can a non-designer create the projects that look relatively good, that don't look hideous but look good enough. Like, what are the rules or kind of basic principles I could apply? And I've got a bunch of replies which I was reviewing them today, and I have to spend more time on this, but I've got some amazing recommendations. I still have to get back to the people. So that's one thing you could do, and ask specific questions. So don't ask like, I guess if you're asking a general question of how to learn to code, you'll still have a good answer. So yeah, scratch that. And ask the question that you have. If you have a question like, what is the best resource to learn JavaScript? People will still respond to you. And it doesn't have to be, what's the best resource to learn JavaScript arrays or array methods? But if you can, be specific as much as you can, because that way you'll get better results, more effective. So another thing is, try them out. So how do you know which resource is best? And also, it all depends on where you are at in your journey, what kind of knowledge you have from before. So let's say you're trying to learn Redux and you're reading the documentation, and there's just too many words that are jargon or the words you've never seen before. Exactly. Posting your work on Twitter is a great way to receive feedback and to kind of gather what you could improve. So definitely do that and ask for feedback. Don't be afraid that people usually say nice things as opposed to saying bad things, and ask specifically for some criticism so you can get some grains of knowledge from there. So yeah, but try out the resources and see what works for you best. So these are the questions I received so far. If you have any other questions, please reply here, right in the broadcast, or on Twitter. I will probably see it. On Twitter, I'll try to kind of follow it on my laptop here. But let's get to this stuff that I've prepared as well for more general. And I'll try to bang through it as quickly as I can because I only have 10 or 15 minutes left. I'm seeing here I'm at 21 minutes, but I'll have some, maybe 5 more minutes to talk about it. So, extra, I mean. So, code-related frustrations and struggles. So, how to deal with those? First, you need to know that you have to, and we talked about it, about the imposter syndrome. It doesn't go away, so you have to be okay with this. And whenever you learn a new technology, you'll always feel like this, like, oh, it's just such an immense amount of things I don't know, and I don't know where to learn them. Just ask for advice, try to build stuff as you get errors, Google for them, ask people, and that's the way to go through it. And don't feel like you're the only one that experiences it. And because of that, for some reason, you're not good enough to be a coder or something. Because a lot of people feel that because they don't talk to other people. If you talk to other people, you'll see that everybody is frustrated. So how can we know that we are into one particular language, how to choose one language? So I've spent a lot of time thinking about this, and this time is usually your resistance telling you like, oh, what are you learning this language? How about that language? And if you get too deep in one language, let's say JavaScript, and it gets difficult, you're like, oh, what about Python? And I get trapped into that a lot of times. If you're just starting out, go with JavaScript. You will not be disappointed, and all the languages are very similar. And it also depends on what you want to do. So, if you want to do iOS, go for Swift and C# or whatever they use. Android is Java and Kotlin. Web development or hybrid apps. So you can build apps for your iPhone, for your Android, for your desktop, all with JavaScript, so you will not be disappointed. If you want to do machine learning, big data, go for Python. AI also good for, you can go with Python. Any other recommendations? Difficult to make, and those are more languages that you will be using with the main ones, kind of. So if you learn Go, not necessarily you'll be only working with Golang. You'll probably be using some of it. If you want to do any kind of low-level graphics or anything, it's C++ usually. So just try to base your choice on that, and then you can go from there. If you're just starting out, do JavaScript. There's tons of resources. Exactly. I agree. So let me get back to the code-related issues. So another thing that helps a lot is think about the people, and that's what I used to do in the beginning, because when I was not sure if I'm gonna commit to learning to code or not, and I was like 2, 3, 4, 6 months in, and I was like, is it good for me or not? Will I be able to find a job? What helps is to think about the people who have quit before. So let's say you're now on the second month of learning. Think of the people who have quit in the previous 60 days. There's tons of people, and every day there's less and more and more people have quit before you did. So that kind of helped me. And you might also think about somebody who started today, or somebody who started at the same day as you started on. If you continue today and they quit, you're already ahead of them, right? So that helps. Another thing is learn that every day counts. So whenever you get frustrated, think of a big picture. Of the big picture, you can definitely, and if you are doing 100 days of code, you can definitely testify to this, that certain days are you feel crappy, certain days just you cannot code, it just you get distracted or anything, and other days code seems to flow and everything is nice, you're in a good mood. So these days fluctuate, and you cannot allow yourself to base your decisions on whatever's happening at this moment, kind of like let your emotions control you. And what helps is to think of a big picture. So whatever time you code for today will be added to your knowledge, or to whatever time you've coded up until now. It doesn't, even if you're stuck or you're struggling, that time still counts toward your overall mastery. So that can help. Another thing is, when you're online, you usually see only the best coders, or the most promoted, the most experienced coders. Like if you go on Twitter, because they get retweeted, they have the highest ranking blog posts and stuff, so it's really easy to think that all of the people who are coders are in the same position, and they are all at the same level, and you're just starting out and everybody else is like way ahead of you. So what helps is to talk to people again and join the groups that are learning to code. So Free Code Camp, Code Newbie, Learn to Code with Me. So they have the New Coder Warehouse or something on Facebook, a group you can join for like-minded people who are trying to learn to code. And you'll see that a lot of people are in the same situation. A lot of people are starting today, and you may have started before. So don't necessarily only think of the people who are already at the top, because it's not useful. So let's say you were trying to learn how to play chess, and you only look at the grandmasters of chess, and you're thinking, oh, I'll never achieve that. But you will if you continue. But the problem with our mind is that we get scared really easily, and we get into that illusion of, oh, there's such a gap that I'll never get there. You will if you continue, but your emotions always will tell you no. It's like have to do a hyper jump or something. So that's something I had here. What else? Okay, I think I've covered most of the stuff. Oh, I have more. So another thing is, you are definitely smart enough. So a lot of people get into a trap of thinking, oh, I've taken history, or I've taken language or linguistics before, language studies or literature, and coding is math related, and I cannot do this because I have a background in math or in integrals or in all this kind of stuff. And that's not true. A lot of coding is not necessarily math related, it's more of logic. There are coding jobs where you have to do a lot of math, but there are also jobs where you don't have to, and you are definitely smart enough to learn it. And a good book to read is The Mindset by Carol Dweck, I think. And it basically talks about two types of mindset you can have. One is fixed, that your intelligence is fixed, and that's not true. And another one is that you can improve. And the people who think that they can improve, they are actually more likely to continue doing something, and they end up improving. So again, same illusion of, it's very easy to tell yourself, oh, I possibly cannot do this, kind of giving yourself a free pass, or you know, a car that lets you just sit down on a bench and don't do anything. But it's, again, it's your resistance talking, so don't get trapped in that. Another good piece of advice is read other people's coding journeys, or coding origin stories, like how they came to coding. And that helped me in the beginning a lot, because there were people who were coding since they were 5, but that reading their stories wasn't helping me at all, because I've started when I was 23, I think, to get seriously into coding. Now I'm 25, so hopefully, I was always thinking, oh, it's too late, but people are starting to code when they're 50, when they're 60, and they're doing great stuff. So, and that's another thing that your mind might be telling you. Yeah, so that's it. That's what I had for the coding part. And another section I have is for general. when you get into a depressed, negative state, how to get out of it. I have some advice because sometimes I tend to get into that state, and we all are to some extent. For me, it's not necessarily super deep depression or anything, but it can affect me a lot. And one thing that can help is try to help others. So find little ways to help other people. And the easiest way to do that in code is to go to 100 Days of Code, see if anybody is frustrated, and offer your help. And when you distract yourself from thinking of those kind of the issues that you have, they tend to subside. So I'll take another 5 minutes to go over this stuff super quickly, and then we'll be done. So helping others is one. Second, physical activity. Physical activity helps a lot. I was once in a very negative mood, and for maybe 3 or 4 days I was kind of very, I would not say super depressed, but it wasn't the best state. So what helped me was, and I was also away from my family, so it was really difficult for me to kind of go through on my own. What helped is I went for a jog, so I went running, and it was like 4 in the morning because I couldn't sleep. I was so upset, and I just spent all night reading and thinking about all the stuff that could happen and all those negative thoughts. So I went for a jog, and after I came back, I was in a much better state. I wasn't completely in a positive state, but it helped. So physical activity helps a lot because it generates endorphins, so you feel happy. So another thing that can help is meditation, and I've found that I've talked about it in the previous podcast, so I'll talk about it super quickly. Whenever you feel worried about something, or you're always finding yourself getting carried away to a what if this happens, and if that happens, what if that happens? And it's like a chain of 10 events that might never happen, but you're already thinking of that situation as it is already happening, and it feels like it's happening, so you feel in a super bad state. Meditation helps. It helped me literally in 2 or 3 days. I stopped thinking those thoughts, and the thing was, and it was related to whatever's going on in the world. I was upset, I was scared, and I would try not to think about it, but it's kind of like trying not to think of a pink elephant. And if I tell you, don't think of a pink elephant, that's the only thing you can think of. And the same way it works for our brain. If you focus on not thinking certain thoughts, these are the thoughts that you'll be thinking. So you have to either try to, and meditation helps you control thoughts. So it kind of acts as an override. And I've read that it controls certain systems in your brain that are controlling focus, and that control deliberate action and deliberate thinking. So you'll be better at controlling your own mind, basically. And it's very easy. I suggest you start with a book called Wherever You Go, There You Are, by Jon Kabat-Zinn, I think. And it's not a religious book, so whatever you might be believing or not believing, it doesn't talk about this stuff. It just teaches you the basics of meditation. Basically, sit down for 10, 15, 20 minutes a day and focus on your breath. As you find your mind wandering around, and you catch yourself, oh, I'm thinking, go back to observing your breath. That's it. And it helps a lot, and it improves mood so much. So definitely try that. Another thing that helped, and that'll be probably the last thing I'll talk about, is changing your thoughts. So I'm a big believer in the power of thought, and whatever way it might work, it might not be some kind of energy if you don't believe in that, but it definitely, changing your thoughts changes your biology, changes the way you perceive the world. So it works no matter if you believe in, like, whichever way you believe it works, right? So the technique in the book, I'll recommend the book. It's called this Psycho-Cybernetics, and it was recommended to not to me, but it was recommended by Tim Ferriss in his book. And it talks a lot about self-image and how self-image that we hold about ourselves controls our behavior, and it controls how we live our life. So, and in the beginning, so he was Maxwell Maltz, I think is the author. I'm sorry if I'm wrong. I'm trying to remember it. And he is a surgeon, so plastic surgeon. And he had people who would come to his office and they'll be like, "Oh, my nose is ugly, fix me." And he would give them an operation, and they'll look better in terms of like standard beauty standards or whatever beauty standards. But they would still feel ugly, and they would tell him, "You didn't do anything to me." And he shows them the photos, and they look differently. But their self-image, the image of themselves that they hold in their mind that they might hate, didn't change. So that book helps you change that self-image. And one of the little kind of stories that it had was a story about a scientist that was very upset that he would have those migraines every other day, and he wasn't doing really well professionally. His works were not published and things like this. So he read about this new trend of positive psychology, I think by William James, and when it was all starting out. Sorry, 2 more minutes and I'm done, promise. So and he didn't believe it himself, but he decided to try it out. So for 30 days he made an experiment of when he was thinking about the past, he would only try to remember the good things that happened to him, not the bad things that might have happened. When he was in the now, he would try to focus his thoughts on enjoying whatever is happening to him, and to enjoy talking to a person, enjoy eating his food. And when he was thinking about the future, he would try to imagine the future that he would like to have. And in the end, he like his migraines receded, and he got kind of under the wing of another famous scientist by accident, and all these things happened. And I'm getting somewhere with this. So his only regret was that he didn't do a larger, like this experiment, he didn't do it on a larger scale. So back then, I just arrived to Canada. It was 2011, and I was very upset and sad because I've left my family there back home, and I was missing them. I was homesick constantly. I would cry almost every day for no reason. It's more like just you feel lonely in a new country. It's difficult to adapt at first. So like the first 3 months, I was constantly upset. And I've decided to try it out. And actually, it's somewhere on my Twitter. I tried that experiment out for a week, so not a month, for a week. And basically I tried to only think of good things. I've downloaded some like positive music. Smash Mouth is a good band to try out because all of their songs for some reason are very positive. I don't know why. And I also love Daft Punk for that. I love Daft Punk for the music, but also that if you're listening to their songs, they're usually pretty happy, which is a rare occurrence in anything creative. Sometimes usually it comes from emotions, and that's also good stuff, but sometimes you need that inflow of positive thinking. So after that week, I could see that every day my emotional state was improving, and I stopped crying every day. The worst was when I was in the Starbucks and this song Hallelujah came on, and it was like so sad, and the cover was so emotional. I had to go to the washroom and cry there, came back, and that was before. Thank you. So that was really helpful, and the book is called The Psyche of Cybernetics. If you want to try it out, read it. It's an amazing book. I recommend it to everyone. And it was written in the 60s, and a lot of it's been used by a lot of basketball teams, golf players. It has a lot of applications because of the visualization techniques that are described there, and I think it can help you definitely, especially with the emerging insights that come out of the neuroscience, telling you. And basically what they find is, if you're imagining something in your mind and if you actually do it, the effect is sometimes almost identical. So they take those teams of like basketball players, and one team doesn't train, one team only trains in their mind, and the other team trains does actual training, and the team who trains in their mind, visualizing it, achieves almost the same results. And it's crazy. They also have done some MRI, like the newest MRI machines that can observe your brain, or fMRI, that can observe your brain while you're doing something or while you're thinking. If you imagine a letter, like let's say a word, so let's say a word book. If you imagine the letters in front of you, what your brain is experiencing the same activity as if you were actually observing those letters. So that's why visualization is powerful, even if you don't believe in this kind of stuff, like any energy kind of stuff. I do believe in it, I have to confess, but it can help you no matter what you believe in. So that's another thing. So I think I've exhausted every point that I've had on my list. So thank you for joining today's broadcast. If you have any other questions, I'll take them in the next 30 seconds, super quickly. You can post it in the 30 seconds, I'll take it quickly, and then we're done. Yeah, I promised 30 minutes, it's 40 now, but hopefully it's helpful. And having a set out plan definitely helps me, so that's the way I'm gonna do it from now on. Yeah, thank you for joining. Thanks so much.